Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is your tired midnight blogger, what blogs in this case at 7:31 p.m., and I should probably be watching Dragonheart, but instead I've made the likely unwise decision to take on the corrupt corporate media of our times. I'm hoping that I've gathered together a moderately balanced group of information, but I suppose in the end, the viewers will have to be the judge. And of course, the YouTube censors. Shout out to the NSA agent monitoring this blog. Because I am going to possibly be handling some sensitive information, I would like to point out this is all for educational purposes only, that I'm citing some things for fair use. My commentary is itself no more than that, but hopefully the information provided will give you some food for thought and help you to make your own decisions later as far as whether the things you're hearing are actually news reporting or propaganda. I really want to be at Troy's, the guy at the other end of the bar, when he does his Friday night thing. So I'll try very hard not to take much longer than that. And I'm also getting close to my limit on free streaming. Haha. See, somebody is in here lurking. I'm glad to see that somebody is listening. I don't know who you are, but that's okay. Hopefully whatever I share will be useful to you or mildly entertaining. I want to start with this piece. It is simply Elon Musk posting something on X saying that there's a New York Times opinion guest essay that the First Amendment is out of control. And Elon Musk, who, right or wrong, touts himself as a great defender and purveyor of free speech. Absolutely okay if you disagree with that. I don't know where I stand on that because I don't know how I feel about the guy, but feelings are not what matter. As people love to say, facts are what matter. The opinion, in theory, that he is throwing out is that the New York Times is attacking your freedom of speech. His evidence is the fact that the New York Times has an opinion guest essay published on July 2, 2024, saying that the First Amendment is out of control. I have myself very strong views on the First Amendment. I'm not saying it's absolutely impossible for the First Amendment to get out of control, but I think it highly unlikely. Our society is built on that. There's very little that is more fundamental to freedom than the freedom to speak, the freedom to believe what you want, to think what you want. Because let's face it, without the freedom to speak, we really don't have freedom of thought. Now, whether the founding fathers were right about speech or not, it is absolutely true that barring torture or chemical substances, we can't honestly lose our freedom of thought. But having said that, when you can't speak, when you can't debate, that means that a glaring number of truths, or at least thoughts and opinions, are not being shared, which means that you're really not truly free to think because you're only able to take what other people are saying. And yes, you can do your own rumination. A great saint or contemplative or someone deep and powerfully strong in their self-esteem can likely overcome these obstacles, but the average person likely can't. So I'm going a long way to say some things. The New York Times, I don't know that they actually respond to this, but they do have something to say about Elon Musk. Now, some of you may know, and I thought about starting with this instead, but some of you may know that Elon Musk fact-checked Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, well, I'll get down to it. Kamala Harris on Twitter had made the statement that Donald Trump would ban abortion nationwide. President Joe Biden and I will do everything in our power to stop him and restore women's reproductive freedom. Now, we all know that, right or wrong, a lot of fact checking, and some would say censorship, but some would say no, it's just simply fact checking, has been going on in the last 4, 5, 6 years. Personally, I have very mixed feelings about fact checking. On one hand, I like being able to look up to see if something is true, but I want those resources to be central, unbiased, and mainly filled with facts, not opinions. And all too often, when I go to fact check something, even on Snopes, I often get something that's just an opinion. This is true or false because I said so, not because of some reasoned out information or some facts. Yes, Putin's cat, it is random streams time because I felt like it. Elon Musk is saying about Kamala Harris, when will politicians, or at least the intern who runs their account, learn that lying on this platform doesn't work anymore? And then he continues to list sources. Now, I suppose if I were a really good blogger, I would have looked them all up and seen how much truth or falsehood there is in there. But at the end of the day, why did that? Oh, I am not doing well on clicking on things. But at the end of the day, I realize there's going to be one half of the people who are just going to say, without thought, without referencing anything, without reason, one half is going to say, absolutely, Donald Trump wants to ban abortion. That's his plan. That's what he's going to do. And then the other half will say, absolutely, that's not his plan. He never said anything like that. And anyway, abortion is this, that, or the other. And at the end of the day, you don't get anywhere. But Elon Musk does at least provide some sources here. If my point was to go into this debate, I would check them out. But my point isn't so much whether or not Trump is trying to ban abortion. My point isn't anything to do really with Kamala Harris. My point, as it often is how can we get at the truth? Putin's cat says, Musk is one crazy person. If I had billions of dollars, I would not be on Twitter. Yeah, it's not a bad point. Having said that, I think it's a good point to point out that the big tech has been fact checking a certain side for a long time. And I cannot help but feel, centrist though I am, that it feels good to see that the other side is also being fact checked. That's always been my problem with it. I'm okay with you fact checking. Fact check both sides. Don't be biased. He's showing bias here, absolutely. But at the same time, it's just refreshing to see it on the other side instead. Now, as you will likely point out, two wrongs don't make a right. And as you pointed out, Elon is crazy, but then I would suggest most people in the media are. So let's see if there is anyone sane out there that we can look at besides Elon Musk, who is more or less centrist, more or less trying to give us the truth. And while I put a picture of Matt Taibbi on here because I'm subtly suggesting that we all check out his files, that's actually not what I'm going to do today. Instead, I'm going to go to someone who is one of my favorite reporters for a long time, and then somehow I lost track of the guy. I more or less let the world distract me with all of the scandals and all the viruses and all the elections and things like that. And I've kind of lost track of this person. And so the other day, I thought I would look up some of his things and see what he says. Now, I could be wrong, but I've always felt like this is a centrist person, a moderately honest person. And he used to be pretty popular in the circles of, I'm having my Biden moment, in the circles of news and journalism, but I just don't see him very much anymore. Maybe he was discredited and I don't know it. So, this person is John Stossel. And I'm sharing the wrong thing first. John Stossel, I always felt he used to do a thing on 2020 where he would basically share news stories and point out the myths, mistruths in them. And he was very popular back in the 80s and 90s. And I noticed I don't know if he just got rich and decided he didn't care about it anymore, or if somehow he fell into disfavor and I just didn't figure it out. But John Stossel has his take on media bias. Now, of course, I've got to be careful. But again, this is fair use and for educational purposes. I may or may not disagree with anything that he says. But I would like to invite us to listen to some reasoning that's not just party-aligned stuff.
Suck up to some politicians?
I'm struck just in your presence.
Struck in her presence.
Looking you in the eye with your passion that you are displaying.
Republicans are treated differently.
If I may finish just answering.
Well, let me
this
just.
is really important.
I'm gonna go ahead and interrupt you here.
On the DOJ
Are you comfortable
and the
with that
FBI,
term? Let's just,
I mean, we have
just
seen.
on my question, though, Governor.
Excuse me.
Aggressive interviews are easy to notice, but some bias is more subtle. For example,
What a great campaign.
the media have always covered Iowa caucus victory speeches.
We're going to want to listen in very, very closely.
Thank you, Iowa.
But this year, when Trump won,
Thank you. We love you all.
CNN cut away from his speech.
Here he is right now under my voice. You hear him repeating his anti-immigrant rhetoric.
Actually, no, Jake, you hear him. We don't. CNN wouldn't let us actually listen to Trump and decide for ourselves.
And again, it's not that my point is to vote for Trump or be pro-Trump. My point is, when did it become the media's job to tell us what to think, what we were supposed to hear, what we're supposed to listen to? I don't understand it. John Stossel doesn't understand it. I just don't have $1 billion. Maybe these guys need. Putin's cat is saying something about Elon Musk having $1 billion. Noted. It's not my point, but noted. And he likes Lord Coe's face. Okay, very good. Let's see what else John Stossel is sharing now. Rachel Maddow is someone that I actually used to like way back in the day, but I found that I like her less and less as time goes on. Putin's cat, I'm not going to play Fox simply because everybody's already assumes that that's biased. My point isn't to say that there's right-wing and left-wing bias. My point is that there is bias. And I'm just trying to demonstrate that a big difference has come from what used to be reporting and what is now, in my humble opinion, fawning and just telling us what to think. All right.
MSNBC showed none of Trump's speech. Rachel Maddow said,
"We will let you know if there's any news made."
Maddow says it's not responsible to broadcast Trump live because he lies so much. But we reporters can point that out instead of cutting away when he talks. I've repeatedly reported on Trump's lies. Trump lies even about unimportant things like the
And there's Fox News for you. So they're balanced. Yay.
crowd at his inauguration, the ratings of his TV show. But Biden lies too. Here he lies about doing well in law school.
Ended up in the top half of my class.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class.
He also lied when he said,
I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period.
I shouldn't be surprised that the media treat Republicans differently. For every Republican in newsrooms, there are 10 Democrats. And now NPR has actually hired this woman to be its new CEO. She not only tweeted, Trump's a racist.
And now the thing that I'm going to share with this is there was a time when reporters didn't tell us what to think. In other words, there was a time when reporters didn't come out and say, hey, David Duke is a racist. They would say David Duke was part of the KKK, because that is a fact. Whether or not he's a racist, yes, you can probably deduce from David Duke being in the KKK that he is a racist, but it was not the job of the media to smear people or put ad hominem attacks on them. It was their job to report. If you want to report something that makes people believe that Donald Trump is a racist, that's fine. But just to come out and say it is not journalism and is not reporting. It's telling us what to think. And they're both off of the rails, honestly, Putin's cat. When CNN goes nuts, he used to go to Fox. Then Fox went off the rails. And you're exactly right and wise. That's what I'm kind of vaguely trying to do here and trying to share. John Stossel is no longer affiliated with any of these people. I know he's gone from the bigger stations to Fox, and now he's on his own because he wants to report what he wants.
But during BLM looting said, sure, looting is counterproductive, but it's fine because what they're looting comes from a system of oppression. She's now the boss of government-funded radio?
And again, if she's a reporter, which I guess she's not really, but at the end of the day, if you're reporting on that, you should be saying this violence is happening, this looting is happening, so-and-so states that this is happening because of such and such, but not, simply, oh, it's okay and it's fine because there's oppression. One is reporting. One is telling me what to think. This is my issue and this is what I'm trying to share.
Yes. Here's another example.
The governor of Texas refuses to give in to federal law.
Recently, reporters suddenly got very upset about rule of law.
The governor of Texas refuses to give in to federal law.
The media can't believe that Texas politicians put up a fence and won't remove it even after the feds told them to. But when it comes to sanctuary cities, the tone is very different.
Communities that shield undocumented immigrants by not reporting offenses to immigration enforcement.
They choose not to follow federal immigration laws.
They simply choose not to follow the law. They don't refuse like Texas does.
The governor of Texas refuses to give in to federal law.
Finally, the way the media labels politicians is just biased. Argentina's new president is a libertarian who promises to take a chainsaw to big government. So the media call him far right.
Far right.
We're all far right now.
radical.
Far-right Javier Milei.
Far-right Javier Milei.
Far-right libertarian Javier Milei.
At least she calls him libertarian, but libertarians aren't far right. Most of us.
And yeah, I agree. I mean, it's not that I have a lot of experience with looters or looting, but looting often really doesn't have anything to do with politics at all. It's just some people who see an opportunity to steal stuff and do it. But anyway.
For ending wars, free trade, gay marriage, and all sorts of things far from far right.
Milei supports legalizing the sale of human organs.
Maybe you oppose organ markets, but it's not far right. Conservatives are more likely to oppose organ sales. The shallow media just label anyone who doesn't agree with them.
And there's my point right there. It's not even so much about the bias. We've always known about the bias. I'm about to go into the difference between 70s reporting and current reporting. Even back then, there was a fairly strong left bias, and it was fairly well known. But there were still standards. There was still an obvious difference between the reporting that was done then, even if it was slanted a little bit, skewed a little bit, and whatever the heck we're being fed now. What we're being fed now, in my humble opinion, is usually not reporting. It's just being told what to think, which I personally resent.
Right wing.
Argentina elected a right-wing former TV.
Okay, I'm going to pause here just to say, I know people who love this comedian, and I do too on occasion, but I'm going to guarantee you, when you listen to Johnny Carson, you really couldn't have just told who the heck he voted for. I have no idea if he voted for Reagan or Carter. None. And that's the way it should be. He made jokes equally about both of them.
He hosts
far right, and Trump-like.
Donald Trump of Argentina.
He makes Trump almost look like a conventional political candidate.
He is nothing like Trump.
Economist Daniel D.
What do I care? What do I care that he's nothing like Trump? Why don't you just tell us, what is this guy doing? What is going on in Argentina? What is this guy saying? I don't need to be told what to think. I need to be told who this person is, what he does, who, what, when, where, why. Basics of journalism. That's what I need, not what to be told how to think.
DiMartino points out that Milei's policies are very different from Trump's.
The only thing that's similar to Trump is that he went against the establishment. He's funny in his speeches. He's charismatic. He has crazy hair, but that's it. I mean, this is a guy who's for free trade. This is a guy with very set on principles, who's very smart on economics.
The media eagerly cover protesters who oppose Milei's cutting the size of government.
Thousands are attending at demonstrations opposing his drastic cuts to public spending.
Media call most any budget cut drastic, slash and burn, astronomical, draconian. But at least in Argentina, the proposed cuts are big. A lot of people don't like this. Unions are protesting.
In Argentina, it's very popular to protest and block streets.
It's the second protest against him this month.
But President Milei did something different because some union members get welfare payments.
He said that anybody who blocks a street illegally will lose all welfare benefits. Guess what happened? No streets were blocked.
Who knew that protesters blocking streets could be stopped by threatening their government handouts? You won't hear it from the leftist media. Libertarians get trashed. Republicans.
You know, libertarians are pretty dangerous. Just, saying.
Get interrupted and their speeches cut off. But Democrats largely get a pass, even if you can't tell what they say.
Beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer in this refinery. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lakes.
But there is some good news. Today, more people ignore leftist media. CNN's primetime viewership fell behind the History channels recently. More people now get their news from independent journalists who publish in places like Substack and YouTube. Like us, it's a good trend because we're more thoughtful than the silly people on TV.
Mr. President, what did you order?
Chocolate chip.
I got to tell you, I take it all back. The vital importance of knowing that Biden ate chocolate chip ice cream. Man, no, I take it back. The media really is reporting the good stuff. Yeah, I was being sarcastic, Putin's cat, number one. Number two, I'm not a reporter. I'm a blogger. So yeah, I can make that statement. Having said that, though, I'm more of a libertarian than not. So when I was saying that they're dangerous, I was being sarcastic. There's also a thing about putting things in context, which I realize that the media doesn't teach us about anymore because they take everything out of context. Hello, Connie Cleary. Thank you for showing up. I will try to make this moderately quick. So I wanted to show an example of this, but I wanted to do it in a not quite as divisive and not quite as in your face kind of way. I wanted to pick a issue that hopefully won't bring people down on either side quite so much. I had a friend once who told me that they believed that there was media bias at CNN, but that they'd never caught them in a lie, but they'd caught Fox in several lies. And by the way, Putin, that's also why I'm not using Fox, because everyone has already established that they've lied. So I feel no need to even try to defend them or shoot them down. It isn't relevant much to what I'm trying to say. One, no, I'm not going to answer. But number two, I really did consider not so much talking about Edward Snowden as Julian Assange. And I was thinking about doing a comparison between Julian Assange reporting and the Pentagon Papers of the 70s, but I chose a different situation instead to compare. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share a modern reporting issue and show how it's been blown out of proportion. And then I'm going to compare two issues that happened in both the 70s and recently and demonstrate the difference between how they were reported, again, by a liberal left slanted thing. Because my point isn't to destroy the left. It's not to destroy their reporting. The right does it too. And, you know, if you want that information, I used to blog about it till I was exhausted and nobody read it. That my side, which is the right of center side, was constantly lying to each other. So if you want to know why I'm not really talking about that, it's because I'm tired of talking about that when the other side evidently just gets a pass. Yes, I know, Connie Cleary, you're always in those streams, and I did this last minute, so you don't have to apologize for being late, Connie. Putin's cat, Assange is not a traitor, but he is a criminal. I think that's a good point. Putin's cat says he's dead center, and respectfully, I used to try to say that, but frankly, I don't know that any of us are truly centrist. And the truth point is, the very people that I'm talking about will almost certainly look at your dead center stance and say, no, you're not. No, you're not, Putin. You're far right. I guarantee you're far right. Now, of course, you'll protest till the day is long because you actually know what you think better than they do. But it doesn't matter. They'll dismiss what you say. They'll pretend like you don't know what you're talking about. And Putin's cat, yeah, I think you do see most sides a lot better than a lot of people. I hope I do too. Maybe I don't, but I'm a little tired and frustrated today. So sorry if I'm being a little more blunt than I usually am. So the topic that I've decided to pick for analysis, again, I didn't want to get anything too controversial, but it was reported some years back that bees are going extinct. I'm going to start with CNN's reporting of it, and I don't think this is going to be really terrible or flagrantly bad. And then I'm going to show what John Stossel reveals about the disappearance of the bees.
Bees are disappearing worldwide. Scientists' theories as to why include a mite that attacks bees, pesticides that kill the insects,
Okay, now I will give them credit here. This guy is starting off with something that's more like traditional reporting than catastrophizing.
habitat loss, and even bad nutrition for bees. And the cause for concern goes well beyond the collapse of honeybee colonies. Bees help pollinate 35% of the world's food. The Franklin's bumblebee alone would help pollinate cranberries, blueberries, and melons. But that type of bee may already be extinct.
Bee vacuum in one hand and net in the other, Robin Thorpe is on a quest.
So we're coming into the area where I last saw Franklin's.
He's searching the mountains of Oregon for Franklin's bumblebee. It's a species he's believed to be the last person on Earth to have seen alive. And he's got a sample of the bee in the back of his truck. It's from the 1950s.
And this is Franklin's. And you can see she has a black face, a little touch of whitish hair, pretty subtle.
This is a bee that could be extinct in the wild.
Okay, once again, even though I've been criticizing, and I'm still going to criticize, this is much more like true reporting than what we usually get out of the media. Possibly because it's not the usual topic. It's not Trump. It's not Biden. It's not this catastrophe or the other. It's bees. And yes, we made a big deal about bees, and bees are important, but it's not quite as emotional. Do we need pollination for cranberries? You know, that's probably a good point. I don't know enough about it, but I assume likely it would be good to have pollination for cranberries. But you have a good point in that maybe there are flies or hummingbirds or other critters that can do pollination if that's required. Or maybe it's not required and there's other means of transmission for the reproduction.
Could be. I'm not willing to give up on it, but I'm hoping it's still out there under the radar.
The last time he saw it was 2006, exactly 10 years before he invited me to join him. Thorpe is 83 now, a retired professor from UC Davis, and mostly he works alone, day after day, year after year. I spent 2 days looking for Franklin's bumblebee with Thorpe. I found the work absolutely maddening.
The ones that you hear fly by your ear, I'm always suspicious, well, that must have been a Franklin's. I don't think you can put an economic value on a species. They're all priceless, really. But Franklin's is one that I've had a lot of personal investment in. And yeah, I feel an attachment and kinship to it.
I'm not sure whether he'll find it, but maybe that's beside the point. The truth is that for anyone to know a species like Franklin's bumblebee had vanished, someone like Thorpe has to be looking.
Okay. So again, definitely much better than a lot of reporting that could be found. I guess the reason why I picked this is because I really am not trying to deliberately pick and choose, the bad reporting and good, and stuff. But what I am trying to point out is, if any of you remember, there was the Bee movie. There was lots of reporting that was much worse because this really wasn't so bad as far as reporting. But I remember hearing the bees are all dying. We're all going to go extinct. There's not going to be any pollination. There's not going to be any food. We're all going to die. The internet suggests bumblebees are needed, and that sounds about right. And honeybees, according to Putin's cat, are the most effective pollinators of cranberries, but bumblebees are the most efficient. So it's a thing. It's an issue. I don't want the bees to all die. I don't want pollination to stop. I don't want to never eat cranberries again. But we heard, or at least I heard, so much about it way back in the past. And again, I probably should have been sensationalistic and looked for something that was just terrible. This was not bad reporting, but we heard a lot of reporting about the bees are going away and things are not going to be great. So what does John Stossel have to say about that issue? I think he's probably going to analyze reporting that was of a different caliber than what I just shared, because he's better at what he does than I am. Huh.
Have you heard about that other environmental crisis? Honeybees are dying.
Something is killing America's bee population.
For years, the media have talked about
Bee-apocalypse. Bees dying off, disappearing.
all the news shows covered the disaster.
This might be one of the most interesting, disturbing, and puzzling stories to come along in a long time.
Famous actors are sold of the bee-apocalypse.
30% of the honeybees disappearing.
That could have a devastating impact on agriculture.
But wait, grocery stores still offer lots of food. Baseball games are stopped until a beekeeper removes bees. Even here in Manhattan, the beekeeper sells millions of bees. Yet the media say
Bees are dying in droves.
Now, about 20 years ago, some American bees did die.
It's called colony collapse disorder.
Beekeepers would come back to their hives and they'd be gone. All the bees would be gone.
For several years, beekeepers lost lots of bees.
So this is what you call a dead hive?
Yep, empty box, no bees.
But beekeepers adjusted. They rebuilt the lost colonies by splitting hives.
Dividing colonies to make up new hives.
No one knows what caused colony collapse disorder, and after a few years, it diminished. Since then, there are 31% more bees in America. They could have.
This is something I have not heard, but anyway, let's see what else he has to say.
Just Googled bee population and they would have seen them going up.
Absolutely. It's farcical.
Science writer John Entine runs the Genetic Literacy Project. It challenges scientific misinformation in the media.
We're not in.
Now, again, we hear that term so much. And I guess one of the reasons why I'm picking this incident is because I want to point out that disinformation is not just a one-sided thing, number one, but I also wanted to point it out with something that's not quite so emotional and quite so controversial. Yeah, Putin's cat, good point. You really can't be called a beekeeper if you lose bees. Yeah, good point.
Any way facing an apocalypse involving bees. Things have never been better in terms of the numbers of bees globally.
The numbers go up, but their dying stories continued.
Bees are disappearing worldwide.
Oh, now he's going to quote the story I just shared. Good on him.
All you have to do is read the basic science on these issues, whether it's on the genetic literacy.
Nobody reads that.
They don't read that.
Look, more people are going to watch the video that says you might starve.
Do you like to eat? The disappearance of honeybees could have a drastic effect on our nation's food supply,
which could lead to millions of people starving in the following years.
The media are so irresponsible.
Okay. And if you get nothing else out of this video, if all the rest of it is just pure bilge and nonsense to you, I want you to at least think about that statement. Think about the evidence that I'm presenting to you, because I've had so many friends who have just bought media stories, hook, line, and sinker. I know it's on both sides. Putin's cat, you have a point that to be truly unbiased, I would have to do Fox. If I were a real journalist, I would probably do that. I'm not trying to be a real journalist. I'm trying to essentially get my thoughts out and share with the community and see what other people think. But at the end of the day, it's like I say, I've already just poured my heart and soul out into the people who purport to be on my side are lying. But here's the deal. The people on the right often they just don't seem to care. Not always, but often. And then my friends on the left, well, yeah, of course, that's a given. But then they don't see the stretches of truth and sometimes even deliberate lies on their own side.
Time predicted a world without bees, even though this beekeeper who gave the magazine this bee for their photo shoot would have told them.
The bees will outlast you. They've been around since the Cretaceous period.
I don't remember seeing Time apologize for its cover.
Time has not apologized or even written a new article.
And to be fair, maybe he's stretching the premise a little bit. I myself don't really care if Time Magazine apologizes about the misinformation about bees. It would be kind of nice, but there are other things that I really would kind of like an apology from them about. And good evening, Matt Cheatwood. I hope that you had a wonderful July 4. I know that liberty means a great deal to you. And here I am once again talking rather pointlessly, not so much about censorship this time, but about media disinformation and how the disinformation is not always packaged the way we're told it is.
Article that puts this in science perspective.
Oh, and to get you caught up, Matt, I basically shared that Elon Musk had dinged Kamala Harris for saying that Donald Trump is going to unilaterally ban abortion nationwide, which is not to be pro-Trump, but I think is demonstrably false. I don't think that's anything of his plan at all. And it was just refreshing to see that that side, for a change, was the one getting fact-checked. And then I started to dive into some issues about fact-checking, but I thought I would start with something that's not quite as controversial and isn't quite as emotional. And somehow I've gotten 47 minutes in. Okay, let's get through some more of this video.
The New York Times, about 5 years
and I will be saying a little more about the New York Times in a bit.
Later, had a cover story about the insect Armageddon, predicting catastrophe. We're losing insects around the world.
Now, just to be anecdotal, I had a friend of mine who is a believer in the possible extinction of insects. Someone that I respect more than a lot of these yahoos in the media. It's totally anecdotal, but he did point out that if you'll notice when you're driving on the highways anymore, you don't get nearly as many insects blasting your windshield as you used to. Now, again, it's totally anecdotal. It's just my experience. It's not science. You don't have to believe or agree, but I have noticed that myself. And that's one of the reasons why I was actually willing to believe of the bee apocalypse back when it was being reported on. Trump was a lifetime Democrat till he decided to run for president. I believe that that is true. I'm not sure what AFAIK means, but, and again, not to be pro-Trump. I'm not telling you to vote for him, but he was a lifetime Democrat until he decided to run for president. He decided to run as a Republican. Whether that is good or bad, I will leave that up to you guys to decide. I have to agree with the bugs on the windshield, says Matt Cheatwood. I also do not see bird flocks as big as I used to. Yeah, I would agree with that. So I'm not trying to 100% discredit the bee apocalypse, but I'm with John Stossel on this in that we need to be doing accurate reporting rather than just simply, and I know that this is not what you're doing, Matt, and hopefully it's not what I'm doing, but rather than just stating, oh, the world's coming to an end and we're all going to starve, maybe report on, what's going on with the bees, what's going on with the population. You missed some of the video. I won't back it up just because I'm trying to get through with this before it's time for a last call with Troy. I know that's coming up fairly quickly. I think I can get through all this before then, though. So the bee apocalypse.
Not losing insects around the world.
Did the Times ever apologize for its magazine cover?
No, they skipped on to another crisis.
There's always,
and this is another thing I kind of want to point out. We hear all this stuff about these crises. We have people slandered and lied about because they see it a little bit differently, and because they don't agree totally with us, we're going to destroy them. But then when it turns out that, well, there may have been some truth to what they said, there are no apologies. There's this total absence of malice thing that actual journalists surely know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, it was a movie that came out in the 70s. Anymore, it's required watching for journalists. And I can't believe that they're required to watch this movie and yet come out with what they have. But the premise of the movie, Absence of Malice, was simply, even if what's reported about you turns out to be untrue, you're still destroyed, because even if it's retracted, even if the paper does apologize, nobody's going to remember the apology. Nobody's going to remember the retraction. All they're going to remember is the accusation. And that is why it is so important that journalists be responsible. And I believe John Stossel does a wonderful job of establishing that no, reporting is not responsible at all anymore. Oh yeah, Putin's cat, Sally Field, about whom I will say no more other than what you're sharing, complained that she was an old maid in her 30s. Yes, sir, Bob.
This is scare.
Catastrophe, exaggeration, that's what plays. That's what gets the clicks.
And if you read their entire stories,
they don't really have a lot of science. They don't have key scientists, entomologists giving their opinions on this. What they have are the Environmental Working Group or Pesticide Action Network framing these issues.
They're disappearing. That's why Greenpeace set itself a challenge.
Yeah, nothing against Greenpeace. I'm absolutely okay with them quoting Greenpeace, but maybe quote a scientist, like a real one, not just someone with a government, but someone that works with bees, has an entomology degree. I can point out one at OSU that probably knows 5 times as much as it, maybe not anybody, but most of the people in this report know about bees. Why is he not up here? Just saying.
Put a stop to the deaths of thousands of bees.
activists make money by scaring people about loss of species.
If we don't act now, every wild polar bear could be gone forever.
Hysteria generates donations, and the oxygen for these organizations is money donated by people who think they're doing good.
Why is it so important to donate to this fundraiser for Greenpeace? Because it's too hot, because it's too cold, because it rains, because it doesn't.
Many of these environmental groups, their policies harm people in the United States and globally.
How? Well, one way is that the groups demand countries ban fertilizers and new pesticides. But the newest chemicals are often the best ones.
Today's pesticides are safer than ever.
The activists blame pesticides for that colony collapse disorder, even though other countries using the same pesticides had no colony collapse. But the facts don't matter. The moronic protests continued.
The government isn't doing enough to save the bee.
And this is where I claim to be right of center. Because if I was truly centrist, it probably wouldn't bother me. But I am sick to death of hearing that the government needs to do more. Putin's cat says Sally Field was around 34 when she filmed that movie. Until recently, she did. She still looked pretty good for quite a long time. I don't have a very high opinion of her, but I will concede that she until very recently, she, in my humble opinion, was always a very lovely looking woman.
On all causes of bee decline, but particularly pesticides.
Even though bee numbers are at a record high, gullible politicians bought the scare, and some places banned the newest pesticides.
The European Union voted to suspend the use of neonicotinoids because of possible links to bee collapse.
That meant farmers often used older, more dangerous chemicals that do kill bees. The natural food people say, organic, you just don't have to have the chemicals. Buy organic and you don't get them.
Now, I will admit, I am one of those people that does think that it would be better where possible to use more natural things, but I also don't want to hop up and down and get really activistic about it. Essentially, if a fertilizer does not demonstrate some kind of poisoning threat, then why not use it? But anyway, I know that that's controversial also because some of these companies do lie about their studies, and that's something he doesn't point out here.
They use chemicals extensively.
Wait, organic farmers use chemicals? Yes.
It's not like organic farmers can sprinkle organic fairy dust to get rid of insects and weeds.
Instead, they use natural chemicals.
An example is copper sulfate. It's one of the most toxic chemicals in the world. Organic chemicals, because they're not designed to be targeted, in many cases are far worse.
Sri Lanka's president listened to the activists and banned chemical pesticides and fertilizers. Suddenly, the same farms produced much less food.
And I'm not going to get into it here, but I know there's been massive farmer protests all over the world because it's not just this issue, but many other issues where the governments are doing things that are basically just destroying the small farmers. If you want less chemicals, buy frozen fruits. Yeah, Putin's cat's not wrong there. Matt Cheatwood, neonicotinoids are a derivative of tobacco. I am not sure, but that sounds right. I will look that up just really quickly. Neonicotinoids. I won't share this, but hopefully I'll read what it has on Wikipedia, which I know is not the be all and end all, but according to them, neonicotinoids are a class of neuroactive insecticides chemically similar to nicotine developed by scientists at Shell and Bayer. Yeah, I kind of hate both of those corporations, but that's neither here nor there. It's not the point of my post right now. Neonicotinoids are among the widest used insecticides in crop protection. They are also widely employed for veterinary purposes, including tick and flea control. So that's according to Wikipedia.
They were forced to go organic overnight, and their production has plummeted.
Food prices rose 80%. People invaded the presidential mansion. The president fled the country, and the new government ended the crisis only by making chemical fertilizer legal again.
This attack on industrial chemicals is really a way for the environmental industry, and that's what it is, to go after what they call big ag, big corporations.
And I'm not entirely against that. I just think that there's more intelligent and less, shall we say, fringe ways to accomplish some of these goals. There should be ways that we could accomplish this without destroying all the small farmers as well. Putin's cat says that 365 brand frozen berries are fantastic. Just have to thaw them for 45 minutes or so. That is good to know. Thank you for sharing that. See, I learned so much from you people. This is one of the reasons why I do this. I learn a lot by sharing all this silly stuff that I share. So
it's really an anti-capitalist movement.
GMOs. The anti-capitalists oppose GMOs, genetically modified organisms. Environmental activists persuaded most European countries to basically ban growing GMO crops. But genetic modification allows farmers to grow more food on less land. It creates plants more resistant to disease and insects, allowing farmers to use fewer pesticides. GMOs benefit everyone, especially poor people. Scientists in Bangladesh invented a better GMO eggplant.
Now, I have also heard plenty of people say, and they may not be right, but I have heard plenty of people say that the GMOs are often bad for us and we're not evolved to digest them. I don't know if that's true. I'm mainly just pointing it out to demonstrate that I'm not trying to swallow all of this just wholesale, but Matt Cheatwood may sound like a tinfoil hat guy, but it is becoming more believable that the depopulation of the human race is the predominant goal of the ruling class oligarchs. My tinfoil is largely, I agree that it does appear that way. It may not be. Maybe we're wrong about what we're looking at, but but it does seem awfully evident that they're certainly not pro us anyway.
That's decreased the use of chemicals by 85%, allowing the women and children who are doing most of the farming to live a much more viable life. So we really have to be smart about these things. We're not going to.
We're not being smart, though.
No, we're following an outdated 40-year-old environmental script that just doesn't work in this technologically innovative world. They are outdated, and they are hurting the very people, especially the developing world, that they claim to want to help.
All right. So the bee apocalypse. You don't necessarily have to believe everything that John Stossel says. That's not my point at all. I'm sure that sometimes he also slips into giving opinions instead of just giving facts. But I believe that article was much more fact-driven than even the previous one, which to me was better than a lot of the other things I had heard about the bees. And now I am going to dive into something a little more controversial. And I wanted to do this toward the end of the stream because I know I do risk a strike here if I'm not very, very careful. Yes, Connie Cleary, go ahead and post for Dino. You probably aren't going to miss much because I only have a couple more things to share. Now, I had tried to find a New York Times post for both issues, and they're out there. Matt Cheatwood, you're not wrong. Controversy is more entertaining, so you're not wrong. If I want clicks and views, I probably should have just dove into the controversial stuff immediately. But I'm going to be talking about the disease that shall not be named, and something that I had learned about from the 70s. And hello, hail Enigma Severus. Good to see you. I'm almost done, but the topic this time has been that there's the media has done too much as far as throwing out opinions, as far as throwing out disinformation, that it's not checked when it's when it's the big corporations or the major uniparty. Those facts are just simply accepted. And so I had also gone into a non-controversial topic and shown, I hope, that there was a difference between the reporting on the topic of the bee apocalypse and the actual facts of what was going on with. It is possible to criticize John Stossel, who's the person that I quoted for the good side, for the fact-driven side. But by and large, he did do a better job, in my humble opinion, of actually giving out facts and information and opinions from true experts, as opposed to we're just going to ask somebody at Greenpeace, we're going to ask somebody in this party or that party, and facts be damned. So now I'm going to go into something a little more delicate. And my point here is not to tell you what to think. It really isn't. You can think whatever you want about the bees. I'm not sure I agree 100% with John Stossel at all, but I do believe that he did a better job of doing actual journalism as opposed to even the other one, which did better than a lot of reporters. I was a little bit deliberately sleazy with this one. I know I've only got 30 minutes to get y'all through to see Troy. I think I can do that. So, since I was willing to be a little bit fantastical and manipulative here, I'm going to share this. Again, I'm not stating an opinion about the disease that shall not be named. This is for educational purposes. I am simply trying to compare and contrast how reporting has been done on this situation in modern times, as opposed to how a very similar situation was reported on in the 70s. And you can make up your own mind about how you think this all, whether maybe the modern reporting is good and I'm full of crap, and that's okay. I'm used to being full of crap.
Brings down the number of contacts between people, right? Which reduces the number of people who are getting newly infected, which reduces the number of people who are getting sick, which reduces the number of people who have to be hospitalized, which reduces the number of people who have to be put in the ICU, which reduces the number of people who ultimately have to be put on a ventilator, which ultimately reduces the number of people who have to be buried. Right? It is all one chain of consequences. And the governor is right there to tie that one data point. And may it not be a blip, may it be a start of a steady trend to see the number of ICU beds in California in use drop for the first time since this crisis. Maybe that's, maybe that's something wrong in the data, or maybe that's an accident. But if that is the start, what you can trace it back to is people staying at home. That is why Americans are being told to stay at home, because of that chain of consequences. The only way that you personally can reduce the death toll in your city, in your town, in your county, in your state is by staying at home.
Now, I'm not meaning to debate the truth or falsehood of any of that. But I am a little bit curious. I'm going to give it a moment. And forgive me for allowing the silence, but I would love for anybody in the chat to throw out a thought on, is there anything that can be criticized on the reporting given there? Again, maybe I'm the one that's full of crap. Maybe this is top-notch reporting and I just need to actually go to journalism school and learn what's going on. Does anyone have any thoughts on the way she's reporting that? I'll give you all a little bit of time. And okay, so Putin's cat. Let's see what he says. He doesn't agree. Driving won't hurt anyone. No, yeah, exactly right. Wearing protective equipment also, she is making an assumption based on recommendations. Well, and that's true. Okay, it's not 100% quite what I'm trying to point out, but having said that, I was silly enough to ask the question, so I should be happy that I got an answer. Yes, she is making an assumption based on recommendations. Now, her job is to report, so what I would suggest is I might not be hopping up and down so much if she'd simply said, hey, CDC says blah, blah, blah. And that's it. There's not this big string of you need to do this because you need to do this because you need to do this. Because honestly, if I'm so stupid as not to be able to figure that out, I really don't need to be watching her anyway. I need to be, I need to be having someone take care of me. Putin's cat says, that being said, if everyone stopped interacting for 21 days, the virus would have died out quick. And I would tend to, I may be wrong, but I tend to agree with you on that point. Again, this is all for educational purposes. My opinion isn't really what matters. Matt Cheatwood, thank you. You exactly. That's what I was going for. Thank you. You're both so very intelligent. Thank you. Her appeal is emotional more than logical. Now, Putin's cat, can reporters not do public service announcements? Well, that's a good point, but I'll show you in a little bit how a similar thing was reported in the 70s, and you just make up your own mind. Which one was better? Which one was more effective? Maybe this was more effective. Maybe we do need people being emotional and telling us how to feel and telling us how to think. And this is actually good criticism, Poots Cat. This effective at everyone. It was not local. Having said that, what I'm about to share with you is also not local. But your criticism is still legitimate because I'm about to share something that wasn't nearly as serious, but we were being told it was as serious. I'm giving a spoiler. Matt Cheatwood, if everyone stopped interacting for 21 days, a lot of things would have happened. Matt Cheatwood, the average person in the U.S. has about 3 days of food on hand. Yeah, that's not wrong. That was one of the problems. Although, again, I'm really not intending to interject my opinion, but I would suggest that a lot of us weren't really in good shape for something like this to happen. Not working for 21 days would have cost a huge percentage of the population their homes. Not wrong. Not wrong. Okay, let's finish this, and we'll see if there's anything more to be learned from Maddow's reporting on the virus that shall not be named and about which my opinions don't count. These are just, this is all for educational purposes, blah, blah, blah.
And it will matter if you do. That is why it is insane for these holdout Republican.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got to point this out. When you interject the word insane, you're no longer doing reporting. You're telling me what to think. You're giving an opinion. It may be a valid opinion. It may be true that this is what I should think. But that is not a journalist's job. Their job is to report. Now, if she wants to report, these Republicans said this, oh, that's 100% valid. But don't tell me that it's insane. That's my job to decide, not hers. That's Matt Cheatwood's job. That's Putin's cat's job. That's Connie Cleary's job. It's not Rachel Maddow's job to tell us that this is insane. It may be, but that's not her job. I guess I should click on the right thing, huh?
Governors and legislators to keep saying, well, we don't have that many deaths yet here, so we'll keep waiting and not telling people to stay home. Well, while people are not staying home, human-to-human contact facilitated by people not staying home means there will be more spread of the virus, more infections, more illness, more hospitalizations, more ICU beds, more ventilators used, and more dead. By delaying, even when they've only got a few cases, all they're doing is making their ultimate number of dead citizens larger at the end of the day. With each passing day, they don't keep people at home. It's just that simple. This is not rocket science. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have a treatment. All we can do is keep people apart from each other so they stop giving it to more people. That's it. It's the only thing we can do. And if we don't do that, nothing else will matter. It's that simple.
Now, this happened before the vaccines came out. Partly I chose to go with that because I really don't want to be labeled as an anti-vaxxer. I don't have a dog in the fight. If you believe they are bad, I'm not going to try to change your mind. If you believe you should take them, I'm not. Again, I know I'm not a journalist. I'm just a blogger, but I do at least hold enough to journalistic integrity to think that it's not my job to tell you what to think about the vaccine. I'm doing a little bit, not exactly. Putin's cat was right to point out that I'm not really a journalist here. But having said that, I would suggest that I likely did a better job in this post than she did in that one, because I'm not calling anyone crazy. I'm not calling anyone insane. I'm not commenting on anyone's policies. I'm trying to share some facts. And yeah, I've thrown out some opinions. But again, I'm a blogger. I can do that. She's a journalist. I should have very little idea how she feels about any of it. Enigma Severus disagrees with Putin's cat on the 21 days of no contact. Putin's cat, Enigma Severus. I don't care. This is how communicative diseases work. Okay, great. I've got controversy going here. And you know what? I didn't include Enigma Severus. It is also his job as far as deciding how to interpret all this stuff. Sorry about that. One side, stay home. The other side, F you, I'm partying. Education, real ways to mitigate interactions would have been better than mandates or no mandates. And I think at least, whether you're right or wrong, you have a good point. Enigma Severus, you have evidence to demonstrate the disease was communicated, because to the media understanding, they still don't know how it was transferred. Likely you both know more than I do about it. Putin's cat in Shanghai, people did starve and die, and people in hazmat dragged them to jail. This lasted a long time. I did write a little bit about that on my blog. Reference back to I got tired of working hard for nobody to read anything. So I learned recently something I did not know, because I was 4 or 5, somewhere in there at the time. We actually had, and I don't want to exaggerate too much, it wasn't exactly like what happened with the virus that shall not be named. But there was a swine flu reported. There was fear about it. There was chaos about it. And there was government mandation that we will take vaccines. The New York Times reported on it, and I want to read it, not to say that one's right or one's wrong, but I want you to think in your own minds, contrast what you just heard from Maddow and what you're about to hear from the 70s New York Times. Matt Cheatwood, in a free country, each person must have the option to isolate or not. Obviously, not everyone can isolate, or the power goes off. Everyone in the hospital gets no care, etc. And Putin's cat says a Chinese-born virus cannot get into the U.S. and spread unless it is airborne. That's not a bad point. I don't know, but it's not a bad point. Otherwise, you have a localized Ebola type situation. Okay, good points. I'm going to read, because I couldn't find video. And I tried to find a New York Times article. There's tons of them, but I'm not rich. I'm not going to pay for a New York Times subscription until I'm either more monetized or something. But in December 21 of 76, they did report on this situation that 5-year-old me had no idea was going on. We don't live in a 100% free country, which is not wrong. You never do. Freedom of travel to anywhere is not guaranteed. An Enigma Severus, during my school certification, we were obligated to read articles that the government themselves told the schools to do what they felt was best in preserving safety. Even the government did not have info. And that is at least a part. It's not all. It's not my main point. My main point is compare the way Maddow reported on it and compare on how the New York Times reports on the 70s. Okay, I will let you guys debate that for now. I'm going to read this article. Now, they do start out telling us a little bit what to think, but nobody's perfect. The New York Times, the sorry debacle of the swine flu vaccine program provides a fitting endpoint to the misunderstandings and misconceptions that have marked government approaches to healthcare during the last 8 years. I wonder if any of that sounds familiar to you. When Washington power has been shared between a Republican White House and a Democratic Congress. Now, the situation's reversed now, but last February and March, on the flimsiest of evidence, and again, there are some differences between the scenarios, President Ford and the Congress were panicked into believing that the country stood at the threshold of a killer flu epidemic, one that might claim millions of lives, as did the much-cited influenza pandemic of 1918-1919. Now, yes, they're doing some of the things Maddow was doing, but here's the difference. They're not just touting a party line. They're not just vomiting out what the government told them to say. It may not be great reporting, but at least it is independent thought. Matt Cheatwood is saying, I'm pretty sure the transmission through commonly touched surfaces is also a viable way for these things to spread. across continents. Today, there is no sign whatsoever of anything approaching a swine flu epidemic, which frankly likely would not have been true with the situation we had today. But then again, if it was true, would anyone have the balls to say that anymore? I wonder. There's growing apprehension that the millions of dollars of federal money spent in the vast vaccination program pushed with all of Washington's energies may have resulted in the death of some persons and sickened many more. Does any of that sound familiar? Whether it's true or not is not the point. This was the New York Times. This was the big league media speaking truth to power. Where's that gone? What happened to that? What happened to, we're not going to just take everything that the government says at face value. We're going to try to make sure that the public is getting the truth and not just what the government says. Oh yeah. I'm sorry about Herman Cain. Do you remember Cain? I also remember very clearly I'm sorry, Enigma Severus. His father was not permitted to get a shot because of his remitted cancer. He had to gut it out. Oh man, that's tough. I also know healthy people too who died and had nothing wrong with them. And that is, again, I know this is all for educational purposes, but it's one of the reasons why I am hopping up and down about this, because I know people, including my son, who I believe, and again, these aren't facts now, I'm diving into blogging instead of journalism for a bit, but I know people who did end up getting sick, but we're not supposed to question any of that. But in the 70s, we were still allowed to question things. There's growing apprehension, this was back in the 70s, that the millions of dollars of federal money spent in the vast vaccination program pushed with all of Washington's energies may have resulted in the death of some persons and sickened many more. In short, there seem to have been significant costs without any visible benefits. Any reasonable effort to assign responsibility for the state of affairs must call attention to at least the following elements. The scarcity in the White House and in Congress of officials with sufficient sophistication in medical problems to be able to put biological reality before political expediency. Where in the world, other than in the small people on YouTube who were mostly censored and banned and silenced, where in the big media was that said ever? I don't remember that. You may have heard it, because I didn't hear everything, as Putin's cat was quite right to point out. I don't always share a lot of stuff about Fox News. Yeah. I won't read, but yeah, I agree with that. And Enigma Severus, I'm glad that your dad lived a very exciting life. Enigma is not getting the vax. He's had the disease twice. He believes his immune system is able to fight it well. In the interest of disclosure, I got the vaccine twice, but again, in the interest of disclosure, I will probably not get it again. I may get other vaccines, but not any of these. It did. No, you're not wrong, Putin's cat. The virus did expose many defects in the country's supply chains, being we need to be less dependent on China. He does. I don't know if that's a silver line. I don't either, but it is very well put. It is very well pointed out. Enigma Severus, that's one of the things I love about you, sir. You are going to go out fighting, and I love that. That's fantastic. I know I haven't expressed that very well in times past, but I actually love that about you. Putin's cat, I may have gotten it, got 2 shots, no booster. I don't know if this made me weaker. Yeah, that's just it. We don't know. Perhaps the low point in the Washington performance came last summer when word of the Legionnaire disease deaths in Philadelphia. I don't know if anyone remembers that. I only remember it because I was a weird kid. Somehow I didn't learn about this, but I did learn about Legionnaire's disease sometime back then. The deaths in Philadelphia panicked Congress into passing a law forcing the government to assume primary insurance liability for swine flu vaccination mishaps. By the time it was clear that the Legionnaire disease was not swine flu, the president had signed the bill and the relevant vaccination campaign was off and running. Now, again, it is not great reporting to say that the vaccination campaign was relevant, but I'm pointing it out that at least they're not just bending over and yes, please, government, I will say whatever you want. I will absolutely spout the party line. Gerald Ford, you did just right by the people. And I direct that criticism, well, anyway, again, I need to stop sharing opinions and just continue with the reporting. The excessive confidence of the government medical bureaucracy. Think about that term. Did we ever hear anything about that from anyone, from the CNNs or maybe the Fox Newses? But frankly, one of the reasons why I'm not sharing much about them is because one side has decided that they're completely discredited. But then the other side thinks CNN is completely discredited. But isn't it not possible that maybe they think that CNN is discredited because they didn't hear stuff like this? The excessive confidence of the government medical bureaucracy. That would have been so refreshing to hear from CNN or MSNBC or NPR. I know they were trying not to scare people and they're trying to put up a brave front, but I'm going to tell you, I'd had way more confidence in them if I'd heard that phrase once or twice, ever. The excessive confidence, while playing down the uncertainties arising from the fact that medical science still knows comparatively little about the origin and spread of influenza epidemics, in a sense, the Public Health Service and the Center for Disease Control reacted as the Pentagon tends to do. I would suggest that that might be a legitimate criticism of this last scenario as well. Both health agencies assumed the worst that could happen and urged action on that worst assumption, just as the Pentagon traditionally wants to have forces capable of fighting three major wars simultaneously. That's actually really good. Putin's cat. He started to slightly stock more canned goods, and but he will run out of toilet paper in a day, though. And Putin's cat. Why can't we have Darth Vader masks that filter the disease? Hell, it would have made more sense. Why can't we have a backpack that acts as lungs when we are sick? The self-interest. This is also not what was reported in this situation. And we all know it. I don't care if you are left-wing. Surely you understand that there was massive self-interest of the government health bureaucracy operating in the operation. And if you don't believe that, then by all means, don't listen to me. But I would suggest that there was. And why were we not told? The self-interest of the government health bureaucracy, which saw in the swine flu threat the ideal chance to impress the nation with the capabilities of saving money and lives by preventing disease. Now, it sounds like a good goal. It really does. But is that really what they're trying to do? And now I'm interjecting my own stuff instead of reporting. The Center for Disease Control in particular has long wanted to increase the size of its empire and multiply its budget by becoming the government Center for Health Education and Disease Prevention. This was the left back then. Do you not see? Please, do you not see that it has changed? Funds used for that purpose inevitably take money away from those whose job is actually to treat sick people. But the potentials of health education and disease prevention are still unproved and perhaps only moderate at best. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the idea of health education and disease prevention. But back in this time, the left would tell you you can't trust the government to be the ones doing that health education and disease prevention. Now they are the voice of the government. It is possible, of course, that the country will still have a swine flu epidemic. Of course. Duh. But more and more expert opinion is shifting to the idea that such an epidemic, if it comes at all, is more likely in late 77 or late 78 than in the near future. My criticism of that reporting is who are they citing? But irregardless, if that happens, the protection given by this year's mass vaccination campaign will be small or non-existent. Influenza epidemiologists now point out that there is evidence to support the scare propaganda. They pointed it out. They nailed it on the head. I mean, it is absolutely just an opinion, so I'm being a little bit hypocritical here, but at least they gave the opinion that seems evident to me. If that happens, the protection could be non-existent. Influenza epidemiologists now point out there is evidence to support the scare propaganda of last spring predicting a return of the 1918-1919 catastrophe, and tend to blame the news media's taste for sensation as the main villain. Whatever the media's errors, however, responsible officials last winter and spring did not hesitate to take advantage of Washington's panic over this issue. The danger now is that the whole idea of preventative medicine may be discredited. I would suggest that's a danger now as well. Why do people think that there are people on the right wing hopping up and down about these vaccines? They may be completely wrong, but I cannot blame them for thinking the way they do when it was handled this way, when we were scaremongered into all of this stuff. The modest contribution that preventative medicine can make to improving the nation's health, and I disagree, I think it probably could be a great contribution, but they're reporting their opinion. The modest contribution it can make to improving the nation's health and to cutting medical costs will be crippled by fears arising from the current fiasco. The blame for such a result will have to fall on the politicians and bureaucrats who formed policy so hastily early this year. In our case, it was 5 years ago, scorning the few voices that expressed skepticism and sought to raise questions about the program. And again, I ask you, do you see, am I the one that's crazy? Do you see the difference between the way Maddow reported, and neither one of them are great reporting examples. There's still way too much opinion in the New York Times articles. There's still way too much trying to direct us into how to think. But there's a vast difference between just touting the line and doing what you're told and speaking truth to power, or at least some kind of vague effort at it. I will finish up with the comments here, and then I'm going to call it a stream. I hope that I've at least made a point. I don't know that I've proven it, but I hope for educational purposes that This demonstrates the difference between journalism, which was not perfect even then, but the journalism from the beginning of my life as opposed to now. Enigma Severus. There is a world case system. We are on the lower end, not wrong, meaning they won't waste such resources on us. And you're responding to Putin's cat. I guess I will back up a little bit here. All right, man, if nothing else, I got people talking. So I feel like that alone, whether I did a good job or not, I think it was great that you guys are having a dialogue, because that's exactly what I want, is respectful dialogue. Putin's cat didn't enjoy the masks, wore them to Safeway and other places, made me feel more anonymous in a way. Yeah, agreed. Enigma Severus, I do remember Kane. Yeah, I not because I don't commiserate, but because I don't want to hurt the wound any further than maybe I already have. Okay, so Enigma Severus, Putin's cat, I do believe you have great insight. Agreed. I think everybody in here does, but I don't agree with everything. And no, absolutely. I would love to, but I am passionate about protecting the innocent. And yeah, I know, I get that. And that is something we do share 100%. Matt Cheatwood learned manufacturing was exposed to fragile methodology. It lacks the resilience of older methods. Darth Plato, the vaccine is perfectly something. The government said so. Failed straight face. Putin's cat is a few years older. I am less motivated, but inflation and house prices are depressing. I feel like getting a job is harder, but AI is taking over. So is that vaccine. My old age at changing markets. And Darth Plato is here. Hello. Darth Plato is perfectly safe. Yes, absolutely. Putin's cat, I've started to do slightly more canned food. We already read that. Enigma Severus. This is where I was trying to get to. Putin's cat, I would argue, this is Enigma, we already have those abilities. They're not open to the public. Putin's cat, artificial lungs are a real thing, but not ready. They would be better than a ventilator. Putin's cat also says HEPA masks do exist, and would prevent disease, but kind of ugly looking. I was dating a nurse at the time. That was pretty surreal, but she did point out that the masks that were shared are not the kind of masks that we actually needed. But she was still for the mask mandates then, and that's her opinion, not mine or necessarily anyone else's. Matt Cheatwood, bureaucracies are organisms. They seek always to gather more resources. Agreed. Enigma Severus, my dad was put on a ventilator. People in here may not be Christian, but my father was. He saw his end coming, left me a message, left Enigma a message 24 hours before he passed. He is at peace. And this is why I backed up. There is a world case system. We're on the lower end, meaning they won't waste such resources on us. Those items are not available to the common hospitals and working force. Darth Plato, is this an Elysium scenario? I must plead ignorance. Fluff Chick Productions, sorry about the delay on coming on board. We're almost done, I promise. I'm going to try to get you, hell, I think it's already time for Troy. So I will just finish up with a few more comments and then end this. Darth Plato, I suspect the real reason for mass was to break the nation of autonomy over our own bodies. Again, this was for educational purposes, but I would suggest that that is at least a possibility. Dr. Doom mask. Enigma Severus, maybe a punishment for some people should be the Bane mask for Batman and Robin. Putin's cat, you think the virus is bad? Wait till Putin loses it. Not wrong. Possibly not wrong. Matt Cheatwood, I agree. This is what they will try to do. I don't know how much longer they will succeed at it. Okay, great discussion. You are all so intelligent. I love that you guys were here, and I hope that this was worth your time. Enigma Severus, Darth Plato, I think the reason was to see who was going to be obedient. Yes. And that's exactly what the New York Times in the 70s says, but we weren't hearing that from the New York Times or from CNN or MSNBC or NPR. We may have been hearing it from Fox, but we were hearing it in such a disingenuous way that many people just didn't want to hear from them. So I'm going to call it a stream. My point here, I don't know that I've proven it, but I hope I have at least put it into your mind that it's possible that the left-wing media, and don't get me wrong, I include the right wing as well, but the left-wing media is no longer speaking truth to power to you. They're pretending to by sharing all the bad things that Trump says and all the lies that he says. And when I say that, I realize that there are people who will disagree with that. But the left believes that they're pointing all that out, and they believe that that is the substitute for speaking truth to power. Well, here's the deal. At the moment, Trump's not the one in power. I'm just saying. So at least until he's president again, if he is, they're not speaking truth to power by saying anything about him. You speak truth to power by telling the government that they did wrong. And again, the main point, if you got nothing else from this, is that the media is slanted. It's not slanted toward you. It's not slanted necessarily left or right, although I spoke a lot about it being a left or right thing. It's slanted toward a pro-government, anti-you bias. And I hope that if I haven't established that at least you will think about that and think about what can we do? What are the positive things like storing up food as Putin's cat has done, as getting land and preparing your family for another thing like this, like I know Matt Cheatwood is doing. And I will thank everyone in the stream and call it a stream. Thank you very much, Putin's cat. You're always very insightful. Thank you very much, Connie Cleary. And be sure and check out her channel with Fluff Chick Productions and her work with the radio show. I'm having a senior moment, but I'm sure I'll come across the chat soon that shares what that is. Yes, that's it. The post for Dino. Thank you very much for all that you do for Dino. That's such good work. And I would also like to thank Enigma Severus. Many good insights. Thank you for having the courage and consideration to share your father's story. I very much value that you had such a good relationship with him. That's amazing. There needs to be more things like that. And Darth Plato, thank you for sharing that you are not just someone who's going to obey. We hate them to say that they will not obey. I'm just going to end the stream without the music because I want us to all go over to Troy and see his last call for Friday. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, has a wonderful weekend. Happy July 4. I hope that liberty grows and continues instead of dies and stagnates. And remember, you're not going mad. You're going sane in a world gone mad. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Thank you for watching.